I'm your host, Zach, and this is the Hoop Junkie Podcast, where we talk all things hoops. If you're looking for another podcast to make that long drive a little less terrible, or even looking for an excuse to get out of speaking to your coworkers, this is the place for you. Enjoy the show.
Greatness on one end in LeBron. There's a dude with 35 in white getting it done defensively and then offensively, taking over the final. Mama, there goes that man. Anything's possible. Anything's possible.
Not a game. Not the game that I go out there and die for. Play every game like it's my last. Not the game. We're talking about practice, man. I mean, how silly is that? And we're talking about practice.
Pulls off three-pointers. Bang! Bang! It's good! Wins the game at the buzzer!
Hello, welcome back to the Hoop Junkie Podcast. First things first, please hit that like and subscribe button on whichever platform you are consuming this junk coming out of my mouth. We are joined as always by my friends Chance.
What up?
And my boy TC.
It's me.
What's happening, gentlemen?
Well, you know, I've been a little under the weather this week, but still feeling good. So this might be my MJ flu game podcast. This might be it. Episode 5, put it in the record books. This one's going to go down in history, and we have a lot to talk about. So this is going to be a fun one.
I'm feeling good. You know, Halloween this past weekend, we had a little party, had some fun there. And then this weekend, you know, my Vols play the Georgia Bulldogs 1 versus 3. So I'm excited for that.
So what's the line on that one now? Like 8 or so?
It's 8.5, minus 8.5 Georgia.
So is that going on daily picks? Who are you taking? As an unbiased fan, what would you bet on that
If I'm
one?
unbiased, I'm taking Georgia.
Take Georgia minus the 8.5?
But, you know, I'm a nega Vol also. So, I'll never bet on my own team, so I'm taking the opposite side.
Yeah, have to. I'm actually really looking forward to that one. I was a Tennessee hater for like most of my life, but I've come around on them a little bit. I think the fans have been a little more tolerable recently. So for my like diehard Memphis fans listening, please don't hate me. I'm not a Tennessee fan. I just respect them a little more now. I'm curious to see how that one goes.
Yeah, good for those Vol fans, man. They've been through hell the last 15 years.
Yeah, you guys had to catch a break at some point.
Well, you got to think about it. I mean, it's kind of hard to keep hating on a team when all they've been doing is losing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Those are my thoughts.
Well,
it's like if the Magic were to go on a championship run, you know. I would
it's like they deserve it after that.
Yeah.
Or the Nets.
For sure. For sure. Well, look, y'all. Hey, I appreciate y'all. We're doing the pod a little bit early for all of our listeners out there. I've actually got to get on a jet this weekend and go to Milwaukee. I might go see our good old friend Giannis while I'm out there.
The undefeated Bucks.
I might be able to come back and give you guys my take on that whole situation. But we've got a lot of news to cover, so we're going to mix it up a little bit this week. We're going to go ahead and jump straight into it and jump straight on up to you know where, to good old Brooklyn, New York, and let's check in on the Nets. So, obviously, gentlemen, this week has been a week from hell.
Oh, yeah. Whoever is the PR guy for the NBA, they are working like 75 hours a week trying to manage all of this right now.
Aren't the Nets looking for a PR guy right now?
I'm sure they are. They're probably looking for another one next week.
Man, I saw
their turnover percentage has to be like insane. Like I'm sure they go through a new PR like I ain't dealing with Kyrie. I'm moving on.
I saw that, man. I don't know if Twitter is Twitter or whatever, but I don't know how true that was.
Everything you read on Twitter is true.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, But the thing is that when I saw that, all I could think about was just Nash getting fired literally the day after he had to go to the podium because Kyrie wouldn't I guess they're holding him out of media coverage.
Yeah, they held him out for a couple of days. He finally spoke today and did not make the situation better.
Man.
He had a couple quotes. He apparently has read the whole Oxford Dictionary, I think was one of the clips that he said. They just asked him hey, can you say you're not anti-Semitic? And he was just like, nah, we're not going to get into all of that. So yeah. And I also read another thing on Reddit, which is another very reliable source, never any false info on Reddit, just like Twitter. But they said that, I guess in the last game Nash coached, they said that there were 10 different instances of Nash calling a play, and Kyrie clearly just ran something completely opposite. Because most NBA scouts, they know everybody's plays, so they can tell if he calls something and they don't run it. And they said there were at least 10 where he would straight up call a play and Kyrie would just run something completely different. So it's been bottling up for a long time.
Well, if you think about it too, Chance, Kyrie has not had any respect for Steve Nash from the beginning. Well, he's anybody can coach. Jack Vaughn can coach.
Yeah, exactly.
No, he wouldn't even accept him as the head coach when they hired him. They're we're all coaches.
Yeah, it was all players, coaches.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kyrie from the beginning is a disaster. And y'all, let me tell y'all something. I had to sit down today before we got on this pod, and just off the top of my head, and I apologize to all my listeners because I could be way more professional and probably should have done my research and got all this stuff, but this is coming straight out of Zach's brain right now. All right, so I went and listed everything I could think of about Kyrie Irving over the basically since he left LeBron.
Oh, man. How did you have time for this?
Man, we all got to take bathroom breaks. You got to find time, right? But look, so Kyrie, he left LeBron, right? Didn't like being the whole sidekick thing. He felt little boyed, right? That whole time. Then he went to Boston, had issues with all of his teammates while he was in Boston. And then he said he was going to stay in Boston, and then he left, right? And so then everybody in Boston, they hate him, right? Because they say that he tore the team apart.
He stomped on the logo, right, when he came back?
Stomped on the logo, exactly, when he came back. His first year in Brooklyn, remember, he only played 20 games that first year in Brooklyn, right? What was it, he got hurt or something like that?
Yeah, I think he had a knee issue or something that year.
Cool. Or, I get it. Injuries happen. I mean, his injury history isn't great. Even when he was at Duke, what did he play, 5 games at Duke and still went number 1?
Sends the coach out the door, too.
Yeah, yep.
And so gets to Brooklyn. I didn't even put that on my list, TC. Thank you.
There's just so much more. I'm wondering when the flat Earth thing came up. Did we skip through that too?
Well, you know what? The flat Earth. Well, I think
that was in his Cavs days.
I was gonna say that was pretty early. We can't just skip through he didn't have that whole saga too.
That was the precursor to this is about to be a freaking beep show, And
yep.
And so Brooklyn gets the coach fired. Then COVID happens. I get it. That was a tough time on everybody. But he was the vice president of the Players Association. Everybody in the Players Association, Chris Paul and them, they cut a deal to bring the bubble back so people could play basketball and players could go out there and get checks. Because if you remember, it was controversial at the time because owners were thinking about not playing players.
Right.
And you got guys on the bottom of rosters who don't necessarily have the same type of money as someone like a Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant have. And they needed that bubble revenue.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, what he decided to do was to go behind everybody's back and try to talk everybody out of doing the bubble. Okay. Then after that, so they came back, and then he played for a couple weeks. And then the Capitol riots happened, January 6th, all that stuff happened. And then he was so hurt by the whole situation, he had to take off again.
Oh, yeah, he took personal time during that. Some of these things that you're saying, I completely even forgot about.
Yeah.
Because there's been so much since then.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, I was sitting there, and, you sit down too long, your legs go numb. That's what point I was at, man, sitting there writing these notes down. But listen, so that situation happens after the riots, and he took time off, didn't tell the team. And remember, Nash had to come up and say, well, we don't know where Kyrie is right now or whatever, and all that stuff. And it's crazy because Nash gets fired literally the day after. He had to go defend Kyrie again from some crazy situation, right? Okay, and then you got to think about it. He recruits all these guys to Brooklyn, and then I get it, for whatever reasons you want to talk about the vaccine. I'm not here to get into the vaccination and all that stuff with you, but the bottom line is he didn't get the vaccine, so he had to miss games because of protocol, right? So, and then you start talking about then when he was away because he didn't get vaccinated, he broke safety protocol by being out with his family and all that stuff, and so then that was a big dilemma too. So he wasn't able to to come back. You just sit here and you think about all of these things, and we all recognize that Kyrie's talent is some of the best talent we have ever seen, right? Like, with the basketball, I can't personally name too many people that could dribble a basketball better than Kyrie Irving.
You know what's crazy? Kyrie was my favorite player in the league.
Oh, I know.
Like early Cleveland days, like the year or two before LeBron got there, and even once LeBron was there, I loved watching him because like he had the Uncle Drew promo commercials.
Oh,
those were so fun. Where he dressed up as the old guy and just balling out. Those were so fun. He was so charismatic.
He was so marketable then.
Very marketable, and he was literally my favorite player in the league. And now he's literally my least favorite player in the league, and it's just so crazy. And not because of his game at all. His game is still the exact same.
As Nike about him, how marketable he is now.
Right.
So so you sit there and think about all these things, and all I can think about is every championship team, right? You can name a player on that team who sacrificed something, right? Like I just think about the Warriors, right? They've been winning. You think about Andre Iguodala when he came to the Warriors. You think about the type of role that he stepped down to play for the Warriors.
Chris Bosh
Bosh stepping down and taking a lesser role.
Kevin Garnett.
You keep going down with these championship teams like since the beginning of time about how people have stepped and took lesser roles or had to sacrifice in some type of way. My issue with Kyrie Irving, as someone who plays a team sport, how selfish is he? He has to be the most selfish player when it comes to, I can't think of almost any other team sport, one person that's more selfish as a player. Because you could sit here and you could say, all right, I'm going to give him the benefit of doubt on why he left Cleveland. Oh, I'm going to give him the benefit of doubt of what happened in Boston. Oh, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt of the issue he had with his first coach. Oh, I'm going to give him the benefit of doubt of the issue he had with his second coach in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to give him the benefit of doubt of the vaccine because, whatever. I hate Pfizer or whatever. You could give him the benefit of the doubt on one or two of these things, but I just sat here and named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm done counting. Over 10 different things of how Kyrie Irving is a terrible teammate.
And the thing with him is, and I think we talked about this a little bit last week, it's just always something with Kyrie. I mean, we're literally like 6 games into the season. And I mentioned last week that we don't even know if Kyrie's going to be in the league next year. That was kind of a hot take, but the more and more that's going on, I might have to print that one out and frame it because he's on his contract year. So what happens to Kyrie after this year? We already are pretty much established he's probably not going to be in Brooklyn. So who is going to sign him next year? And that's assuming he doesn't do anything else crazy. Let's assume this is like the last crazy thing he does. Who goes after him next year?
It has to be a non-contender.
Yeah.
It has to be
someone that just wants some controversy just to put people in seats. Yeah. Like a Charlotte Hornets or someone like that. The Wizards maybe. But like,
no winning franchise is going to bring him in there and cause issues.
And it's so sad to see a guy who literally hits one of the biggest shots in NBA history in that Game 7 in the finals against the Warriors. He was so talented. And the thing about Kyrie, and I've heard this across a few different avenues, Chris Vernon had it, the local Memphis guy the other day was talking about how Kyrie is actually like a really pleasurable person, like in person. Most people that meet him really like him. Rajah Bell said the same thing on The Ringer, that a lot of people really like him. I think he's a good person. He's just so misguided and in the wrong circles. So
charitable. Has donated more money than most people.
Yeah. Some of that because he has to, like the $500K today, but a lot of it for his own, personal reasons too. So I think he actually was a good charismatic person. And, we see this happen with people. He just went into some type of YouTube conspiracy wormhole and never got out. And he thinks he's the smartest person in the room.
Just a couple loose screws. And then he's super hard headed.
Very hard headed.
And let me say something. Let me tell y'all something, man. This Kyrie thing frustrates me to no end.
Well, it doesn't sound like it. You've been pretty quiet about it so far.
I know, and I told y'all, I said, man, I'm sorry, y'all. I got a lot to say. I got a lot to get off my chest.
Get it off your chest, man.
Because here's one way I feel about this, y'all obviously know because we're sitting in a room together, but all my listeners out there, you probably can tell by my voice, but I'm a black man myself, okay?
Can we add like a breaking news clip when you play that?
I'm black, okay? And I understand, especially him being native American and African American descent, I understand his issues on things. And if you heard that whole like 6-minute clip or whatever that ESPN put out today when they were interviewing him. And he tried to say, like, you know, they said before, if you don't want black people to know something, you put it in the book. And he's talking about, I read. Since the beginning of time, guys, I don't know if this is breaking news to you guys, but since the beginning of time, there have been books of all different opinions.
Yep. Another breaking news clip right there for that.
But it does not mean that every last one of these books are going to be 100% accurate and based on 100% truth.
Same applies for documentaries.
Same applies for documentaries. You know, you can sit there and watch a documentary about how something is the most terrible thing in the world, but that's just because that's how they framed it to be that way, right?
Yep.
So my issue with Kyrie is that before Kyrie starts stepping out on these stances and trying to be a social justice hero and all these things, man, you have to do your research. Because my thing is, when you start trying to say you're going to attack the whole, when you're talking about, like, when you're posting videos that have fake Hitler quotes in them.
Yep.
Bro, I don't think that's smart. And then for you to say, oh, well, I didn't say I support it. Well, okay, cool. I get that.
He said, I didn't create it, so I'm not responsible for it.
Yeah, but
all I did was promote it to my millions of followers.
You reposted it. That's like me reposting something about how I think mothers in America are the worst thing ever, and I think fathers are better. And if I reposted it and my mom calls me and is like, hey, Zach, remember all those years that I gave you my breast milk to keep you alive? You know what I mean? Like, you
can say, hey, I didn't create it. I don't support that.
Right. But you got to understand how people would be offended by it. And then and it's just so sad because I see his intentions and I see, like, he wants to help because he's done things to show that he wants to help. But he is so misguided, and I wish that, and I hope that he gets the help. And sometimes I don't even think he's receptive to getting the help because, like, the whole ADL meeting was a freaking sham because he didn't even meet with that.
Yeah, he didn't even go.
He didn't even go to ADL. It's just you're just throwing money at this, and you're not even really taking time to understand how you may have hurt people.
Yep. Well, the good news is the Nets, they had a lot of drama, but clearly they're deciding they're going to go ahead and move forward from all this. They're going to fix things. And it sounds like they're going to hire Ime Udoka. So that's going to clearly, fix all the drama and settle everything down. So I just want to get, so when this news broke, you immediately said, Zach, that you were looking for that name to pop up. So what are your guys' reactions when that became, which I guess he's still not hired yet. I guess they're deciding after the PR nightmare, they're like, we'll go ahead and give it a couple of days to do our research and see what happened. But what were y'all's initial thoughts on that news?
As far as a basketball move, I think it's fantastic.
No, basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you couldn't get a better coach.
Oh, yeah. If it's 2K, he's got great ratings as far as just bringing a coach in.
Defensively, that guy's going to help them a ton.
With that roster?
Yeah. He can't do worse than they're doing now.
Oh, yeah. I think as far as X's and O's, Udoka clearly is an amazing basketball mind and a great coach. I am just completely shocked that they clearly just do not care at all anymore as far as, like, PR goes, as far as, like, trying to have morals. I think it was shocking to me that they, and literally, like, within 30 minutes after Nash is gone, this breaks. And obviously we don't know all of the details of what happened with Udoka, but clearly it was enough for them to say, hey, you took us to the finals last year, but we're going to suspend you for a season. And if another team wants you, we don't even need compensation. Just take him off our hands and get him out of here. Like, we don't know the details yet, but clearly there was some stuff going on there, and for the Nets to just immediately bring him in,
they just don't care anymore, man.
They don't care at all anymore.
They're in one of those positions. They're in such a bad position.
No draft
PR they don't even care about it. Okay,
no,
they're in a position with no draft picks. They're with some guys with some loose screws that are really talented. They're like, well, let's just get this coach in here and see if he can get us in the playoff and make a run.
Yeah,
like that's where they're at. They're just grasping at straws.
So we've been talking about the Nets for a long time. We'll move on here soon, but I just want to get your thoughts. KD, so he requested a trade in the offseason. It sounds like that was more of a Nash thing, so they've got him out now. At what point does KD get fed up and request another trade? Does that happen this year?
I think he's already fed up.
Hold on, Wojbon. Nets have suspended Kyrie Irving.
Oh, really? How long?
I don't know. He just, you know how Woj, he's dramatic. He'll send it out in preview.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's got to take his time. I was wondering about that, if that was ever going to happen.
Adam Silver just came out and spoke up, like, Yeah, well, yesterday or today. Which I thought it was really weird that Adam Silver didn't why he didn't say anything earlier, like especially with him being a Jewish man himself.
Yeah, he's Jewish, and another thing is 20% of the Brooklyn population is Jewish.
Man, that's like if you're gonna do anything in a market, that's equivalent to like a player. That's equivalent to like Steven Adams talking bad about black people while he's playing for the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah,
Right.
It's just certain things like you got to have more self-awareness, man.
Well, I'm curious to see what the suspension is. I see that now they haven't given the games yet, so we'll do a quick thoughts.
It may just be one of those where they just say, indefinitely. As far as like they aren't going to even put a timetable on it.
So when Myers Leonard had his anti-Semitic comments, he was like on Twitch live stream playing the game, and he made a comment that I don't know if he just didn't know what it meant or what, but he ended up getting a fine. I don't remember the exact amount. I think it was around $500K or so, and like a 1-week suspension. He also was pretty much like banned from the league at that point, but you can argue that was just Myles Leonard is not very good at basketball.
Is that his last contract?
Yeah,
I think so.
It was a little bit of both of that.
While he was in the bubble?
Yeah, that was the bubble year,
Yeah.
I believe. Yep. And so I was curious how this would compare to that, because that was like one little comment versus Kyrie like doubling, tripling down on all of his comments. So do we get any more news on what the games?
5 games without pay.
5 games.
Without pay, too.
Which is fine. He literally sacrificed 41 games of pay last year, so he doesn't care about that clearly. So that's interesting. But did they do that because of the PR backlash?
Oh,
No doubt.
Yeah. The Nets. The thing is, man, and I'm not necessarily. I don't want to give my take on do I think he should have been suspended, because it's hard to compare apples to apples, because like Myers Leonard, like he actually said something. Kyrie did just repost. You know what I mean? Like
Even with that, I still think the Kyrie situation's way worse. But I get what you're saying.
I think the Kyrie situation is worse just because of the entirety of Kyrie. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I think it's just because of everything involved around Kyrie. But I'm not here to get in the semantics because I could be talked either way on the Kyrie suspension situation. But because like I get it, we live in a world where we want everything to be black and white, but y'all know everything ain't black and white. We all got to understand like there's nuances to everything and all that stuff, and I get that. But it is very interesting though that they choose to do this now today when it's been how long has it been since all this happened? Almost a week.
Yeah, it's been quite a while.
So their press release just came out, and they said it's no less than 5 games.
Oh, okay.
So Kyrie, what they said in here is that they're suspending him because he has not made an attempt to rectify what he's
That's exactly what I was
done.
going to say. I think if he would have came out the next day and was like, I'm sorry, I didn't know the full context of what was in that. I saw a couple clips. I meant no harm. I'm apologetic. If he would have done that, this would have been over already, most likely. There'd be a couple people talking about it.
It says in here that he has to satisfy a series of objective remedial measures that address the harmful impact he's done. So if he's going to be hard-headed and not do it, he's going to continue to be suspended.
Which very well could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it happen last year.
Which he's done that before.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
I won't be surprised if this guy
So
does
that's similar to the Myers Leonard thing too, then, because I think they made Leonard like go through some training classes about some of that stuff. So but the thing is, Leonard actually did all of that. Where I could easily see Kyrie just being like, "No, I'm not doing it," and I said he might be out of the league next year. He might be out of the league next week. So we've talked about them for so long now. Shout out to Woj for breaking the news right during our recording. That was great timing too.
And I got one more thing to say, and then we can get off the Nets, I promise. But I don't know if y'all ever remember this, but I didn't read this book, but it was I read excerpts of that Matt Sullivan book that came out a couple years ago, where he went like behind the scenes of like the Brooklyn Nets and talked about where he was saying like how Kevin Durant smoked weed all the time, and was like the Nets organization, how they basically let the players do whatever. This goes to show you on how like player empowerment it's a great thing for the league, but there's a certain point to where you still have to have professionalism in your workplace, and there still has to be some type of order, because when you allow stuff like this to happen, you allow Kyrie to happen. And that's why if you look at how Kyrie was in Cleveland, LeBron wasn't letting none of that happen.
No. It honestly makes you respect LeBron a lot more to realize that he kept this guy under wraps. It's kind of like the Antonio Brown situation in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah,
like
that's what it makes me think of.
Yeah, like he leaves Pittsburgh and you're like, this guy was crazy this long, and Pittsburgh kept that under wraps.
Yeah, everybody in Pittsburgh was like, he was this way here too. You know, we just kept him under control.
LeBron's ball spot got real big by the time Kyrie left.
Yeah, that's very true. So, yeah, that whole situation is just a complete mess. We'll try to move on from here. Let's talk about tanking in the NBA, because this was a big hot topic that was coming up. They're worried about the Wembanyama sweepstakes. All these teams are going to be playing their third stringers one weekend of the season. And so far, that is just not happening at all. And you've literally, when you look at the standings in the West, you've got the Suns number 1 looking great, Portland number 2. They weren't necessarily a tanking team. I think, TC, you mentioned the first episode, we're going to know within like 20 to 30 games what their direction is, and clearly they look like a contender. You've got the Jazz 3rd, 6-3, and then the Grizzlies, and then the Spurs 5th at 5-3. The Jazz and Spurs were both teams that were supposed to be sitting guys for hangnails like within the second week of the season, and they're just out there getting wins. We saw the Jazz beat the Grizzlies twice in a row with Lauri Markkanen just finishing around the rim, doing everything. Colin Sexton looking great. We'll just do rapid fire real quick, one by one.
So like as far, okay.
Let's give our thoughts on the Jazz first, because we just saw them a couple times.
I did a little bit of research into this. The Jazz are currently 14th in offensive rating and 9th in defensive rating. But here's where they're getting the upper hand on teams. So they are 6th in assist ratio, and they're also 5th in offensive rebound percentage. And they're undefeated at home.
Undefeated at home.
So they're 2-3 on the road, but they're undefeated at home. And they're being top 10 in assist ratio and offensive rebound ratio. I mean, that's where they're getting extra possessions. They're getting extra buckets because of that. You know, they're not necessarily playing amazing defense or offense, so they should, come back, regress.
Right. And it's just, and we've talked about this before, it's just a bunch of guys that nobody wanted, all piled together, that all have a chip on their shoulder. Lauri Markkanen gets shipped off from Cleveland. Jordan Clarkson, he's been with the Jazz for a little bit, but got shipped off from LA. Colin Sexton was thrown in the deal. Jared Vanderbilt from the Minnesota deal. Malik Beasley. It's all guys that have just been shipped off and nobody wanted them. And it's not like the Jazz are sitting there like, what's the best like core? We get Lauri Markkanen, Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, Malik Beasley. They go really well together.
Push, baby.
That's the gel of a team we want. No, it's just a bunch of random guys they got as they accumulated their draft pick assets. Right. And it's just all guys that have been in the league for a few years. They know how to play. It's not like a Houston Rockets where they have a lot of young talent. They just don't know how to finish games yet. They know how to close games, and it's working for them. And I'm really curious how they handle this. Do they continue to push for that play-in, or when we get to the All-Star break, are they shipping off like a Jordan Clarkson, a Sexton? I think they have to keep marketing because he's still pretty young.
They're definitely keeping marketing. He's 22-9 with the player efficiency rating of,
and he's not even shooting well. He's shooting like 29% from 3 right now. He's a way better shooter than that. But
he's getting multiple offensive boards a game.
He's
never been known as a rebounder.
Yeah, and his footwork. He's really surprised me with his footwork around the paint this season so far. They look legit. I definitely don't think that they're like a top 6 seed in the West. Like, they're definitely overachieving a little bit.
I think they'll be around the bubble at the at the All-Star break, and they will definitely end up selling off people.
I think so too. I think it's really up to them if they want to be a play-in team. And I mean, why would you want to be when you've got the draft class coming in that we have? So I see them as sellers for sure. But
let me give y'all devil's advocate though. You said here and TC, the one statistic you brought up about how they're winning all their home games. Mm-hmm. When you sit there and we talk about the difference between stars and role players, what's the main difference?
They play well at home. They role players.
And so when you look at their team, they have a great collection of role players. I sit here and look at it from a whole nother perspective of what if Danny Ainge is like, I'm not listening to none of y'all what y'all talking about. I'm going to use all these draft picks I just got from trade and Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert to trade for the next star and plop him in with all these other role players we got. And I'm going to make Lauri Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson my second and third best players.
That's a legit possibility. So over the next 7 years, the Jazz hold the rights to 13 first-round picks because of all the moves with Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. So, I mean, you could get into that situation where they're floating around that 7-8 spot and they throw 3 or 4 first-round picks and go for a star. I mean, Let's just imagine that KD gets so fed up. KD gets so fed up that Danny Ainge is like, I'll give you 5 first-round picks for KD, and all of a sudden, this obviously is never going to happen, but it's fun to dream about.
How do we not know that? I mean, it makes sense for both teams. It makes sense for Brooklyn, and it would make sense for Utah. Imagine plopping KD on Utah right now.
That it's never going to happen. KD's not going to Utah. I'll hate to burst your bubble, but I do like the sentiment of them going after a star. I think there could be some options available.
It would have to be a young star.
Yeah, it'd have to be a young star that still fits their timeline. Maybe like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander if he's tired of being in the Thunder, which they look okay too. We'll get to them in a minute, but they could go both ways. They could, embrace the tank once you get close to the All-Star break, or they could say, you know what, we actually like this core that we've got. Let's trade a couple of picks and let's make a push. Let's get these guys some playoff experience this year, and let's speed up this rebuild a little bit.
I mean, the Grizzlies kind of did that their first year with Morant.
Yeah, we sped up. Like, it was expected that we were going to be like a 3 or 4 year rebuild, and all of a sudden you've got these stars that are outperforming, and then you're like, okay, well, let's go for it now. So we'll move on from there. The Jazz, they've definitely been one of the most fascinating teams for me. Another team that is surprising us so far is the Spurs. They're 5-3 through their first 8 games, and they're actually looking pretty good too. Keldon Johnson, he slimmed about 25 pounds, and he came in. He's averaging 24 a game, shooting over 40% from 3. And this is just another
per game is what surprised me.
He's a better playmaker this year too.
He's balling.
Jakob Poeltl is defending down in the paint, and Vasil hasn't even been playing. I think he's just got activated again, so he'll be back too.
Yeah, but Poeltl has been averaging through. I think they've played. What'd you say they were?
They're 5-3. They've played 8 games. He's played all 8 games so far.
All 8 games, he's averaging 4.5 offensive rebounds a game.
Yeah. He's just getting it done.
4.5 offensive rebounds.
He's a league leader in rebounder.
And he low-key very good passer too. Yeah. This is just another team. They've got a good collection. Obviously one of the best coaches of all time. That helps too. Doug McDermott is just a bucket from the outside too. He's knocking down threes. It's just another random team. I definitely don't see this going as I look up and down their roster. I don't think this is sustainable at all, too. I still see this as like a bottom 5 team. But
they showed you that against the Raptors.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But it's just another situation where this is the best case for a team like the Jazz or the Spurs. They're getting some wins early in the season, so they're making guys feel good about themselves. And then once you get later on, then you can start resting guys, start going for the Wembanyama sweepstakes. But they're looking solid so far, too.
Listen to this. So you remember what I said about the Jazz?
Yep.
What's been giving them the upper hand? Assist ratio and offensive rebound percentage. Guess what it is for the Spurs?
Same thing.
They're first in assist ratio and 5th in offensive rebound percentage.
Jakob Poeltl just creating those second possessions.
But TC, it's one thing that I look at when you start talking about with teams like come on now, we only a couple weeks into the season, right? Records don't really mean a damn thing right now, right? But if you look at the Spurs, their point differential, I think they're like a -2 in their point differential. That to me shows me that they're going to come back down a little bit, because when you start talking about any team that are having negative